Welcome to Green Noise, a podcast series from CapeNature that is bringing nature to life, and we use white noise to try to sleep better, but green noise to make life better.
You're as high as Victoria Falls at some.
Don't take that out of context about the penguins in ICU.
We basically give penguins medical aid.
Welcome to Green Noise, which is a CapeNature podcast series. My name is Dan Corder. I love CapeNature. I'm from the Cape. I love the nature in the Cape, and particularly the nature in CapeNature. And we're at a very, very beautiful CapeNature reserve today for another in our series of conversations with real experts on the crucial parts of nature, sustainability, conservation, and biodiversity. Because the Green Noise podcast series is about giving life to nature, telling the stories behind the beautiful nature and all of the things that goes into it and the people go into it that we care about, and particularly about being bold about championing biodiversity, sustainability, and nature. And today we're talking about hiking, because hiking is basically a cultural practice in this part of the world, and we are very, very lucky to be joined by two people who are deeply within that. Firstly, Louise White from Hi-Tec. Louise, I told you off camera before this, I've not been paid to say this. I have been wearing Hi-Tec hiking boots for 20 years. I've got a pair of brown leather ones in my house, and so I kind of feel like I'm meeting one of my heroes, which is great.
Amazing.
And we've also got Khalid Chogle. He is a supreme hiker, deeply involved in Cape Town's hiking community, in the Cape's hiking community, through organizations and projects like Adventure Rocks and the Hikers Network. And he is actually a mountain hiking, mountain rescuer. To both of you, thank you so much for being here. Completely wonderful. Khalid, I think people often, I would like to start with you, think hiking is just walking, but it goes on for much longer. And particularly in places where there are mountainous regions, there's dangerous cloud cover that can happen very fast. There are things that people just really need to know to be properly safe and avoidant of dangers. So I'd love to hear from your perspective as somebody who does the thing of helping people in times of distress. What are the big things that people don't think about, or they miss, or they don't spot when they're happening, that they should be aware of to be safer when they hike?
Thank you for having me, Dan. So I think the first thing is just to be prepared. Know what you're getting yourself into. Do a bit of background research on the trail that you're doing. If it's a strenuous trail, there's a lot of online forums. There are a lot of hiking books that you can refer to regarding trails, and it will give you a good description on the level of the hike, if it's strenuous, if it's easy, and make sure it fits to your fitness level. You want to be prepared in terms of having the right gear. The worst thing, we see this often, is people have the wrong shoes. They go in flip-flops and they have a terrible experience. And you can understand why. And then also just checking the weather forecast. Very important. Growing up in Cape Town, we know we have 4 seasons in a day often. And if you're not used to the climate in Cape Town, you want to make sure that you check wherever you're hiking. Make sure you check the latest weather forecast and make sure you have the right gear. Another thing is just to let people know where you are. Let someone know where you are, where you're hiking, what trail you're doing. Being part of the Hikers Network, we've got an initiative called Safety Tracking, which is a volunteer tracking initiative that is run by the hiking volunteers and the senior hiking members. So basically someone who'd post what hike they're doing on a WhatsApp group, what trail, where they're starting, how many in the group, what time they intend ending. And someone would monitor that group, and if they pass the due date, they would get a check-up on them. When they register for the service, which is completely free, they would register the next of kin as well. So if they can't get hold of the person, they would get hold of the next of kin, just to make sure that they're safely off the mountain.
That's so interesting. And if you get trapped in a cloud, don't move. Or at least walk back the way you came.
Yes,
because
definitely.
It is so easy to walk off the edge of a rock that's the same color as a cloud, and then you've plunged when you could have just sat tight for a second.
Yeah, exactly. Stay on the path and don't go off the path. Rule number 1. If you are lost, if you can retrace your steps, retrace them, but try to stay on the path and make yourself visible.
And in terms of essential hiking gear, beyond the right shoes and no flip-flops on India Fenster, what else do people really need to make sure they have? I'm sure enough water is somewhere in there, but what else?
Definitely. So water and snacks. Try and put some salty and sweet snacks. You want to have a whistle, very important. Like you mentioned, if someone is lost, a whistle, the sound of the whistle travels a lot further than the sound of your voice.
Huh, okay.
So a whistle is very important. You want to have a rain jacket. The weather changes very quickly, and especially if you're going up the mountain, you want to have some sort of insulation, and the rain jacket will do that for you. Your fluids, water, energy bar. I would say a compass and a map, but not many people know how to use a compass or a map.
It's probably more problems than solutions.
Yes, so I would reckon a fully charged cell phone. Most of the phones have map features on them, and have the number of the rescue organization saved on your phone. Probably rule number one.
Yeah.
So just in case I can give the number. It's 021 937 0300. So that's the number of the Wilderness Search and Rescue Organization.
Okay. It's always funny to me. My family does a lot of these 2-3 day Cedarburg hikes, and how very, very often when you go and do a hike, it's way braver than you think it is if you're doing it for the first time. Because you're like, it's about this long, and I've heard it's about this much, and I can probably do that. And you only find out like 6 hours later. It's so important to have exactly what you need to minimize the risk, maximize your chances. Louise, you are an expert in all of these kinds of things. What should people be looking for when they're trying to pick out the right gear, the right boots, the right rain jackets, all the kinds of things that Khalid just spoke about?
Yeah, definitely. I think to do your research, there's obviously different levels of hikes that you can do. You can do a hike that's 20 minutes, or you can sort of climb Kilimanjaro. So I think it's about finding out exactly what you want to do. And then, as I say, Hi-Tec offers a variety of different footwear. I think ankle support is a big one. I think people are used to sort of wearing normal sort of gewone tackies.
Yeah.
And ankle support is something that is actually so needed to really make sure that you can climb the mountains and whatnot, with the terrain being so sort of uneven. The basics are also very important, making sure that you've got good socks, making sure that you've got a hat. Those are all things that sometimes people overlook, because they're trying to be make sure that they've got all the fancy stuff, but then neglect the sort of other important things. And then of course, you also mentioned a rain jacket. That's super important, to make sure that you have that it's waterproof, that it can keep you dry, that it's got a hood and all of that stuff, so that you're as prepared as possible.
Something that I think people who don't come from hiking families will never understand is your relationship with a good pair of hiking socks.
100%.
Like the thick ones, the strong ones, they've taken you places, and you deeply understand that when you try to wear normal socks. And then at the end of that hike, your feet are absolutely destroyed. I also wanted to ask about backpacks, because backpacks are so important, to have them perfectly sized, to have them not to be padded enough, I imagine, at the back, to not be beating you because your back as you hike, when you just wanted to have rusks and a hot flask for tea. I'm sure that's something you guys know a lot about too.
Definitely. It's also making sure that you buy the backpack and you test it.
Like a car.
Exactly. I mean, load it up and just do a short hike. Make sure that it's comfortable, and don't overpack it. You also see some people that they've got snacks overflowing out of the backpack, or you see people that don't have any backpacks.
Yeah.
So it's just about finding the right balance, but definitely making sure that you've got a sort of support on the belt, and that you've got padded straps are the two most important things.
When you go hiking, do you get heartburn looking at bad brands with bad backpacks and bad shoes? Do you look at people and go, guys, we're right here?
Well, it's crazy what you see on the mountains. And it definitely, since working for Hi-Tec, it opens your eyes, and I'm constantly looking down, and the amount of shoes that you see. I mean, I saw someone the other day wearing sort of those like water shoes.
Like
and
surf
slops,
booties.
like surf boots and smart shoes. So we've seen it all, and it's also just not really safe to be wearing those kind of shoes.
For sure. Khalid, we spoke a little bit earlier about extreme weather emergencies that can happen, getting stuck in clouds, but there are also things that humans bring upon themselves when they get overly dehydrated, or there's too much sun exposure, or they take on an incline that they were just not built for, no matter how much CrossFit they did in a gym. And so I want to hear about the different ways that we need to watch out for different kinds of extreme weather problems and different things that we could cause for ourselves, and what are useful tips for avoiding them, or at least maybe even handling them when they happen.
Like, as you mentioned, the different seasons have the different challenges. So in summer, you want to make sure that you start your hikes early, before the sun comes up. You want to start at like sunrise. You don't want to be hiking at midday. So try and avoid the red zones, so between 11 and 2 o'clock. So you want to start early, have enough fluids, have a sun hat. Also, regarding the fluids and snacks, in summer you tend to perspire a lot more.
Yeah.
So you want to have something to replace the electrolytes and the salts that you lose as you perspire. So having an energy drink, some salty snacks, as I mentioned before, and something sweet just to give you that energy boost. And in winter, you want to make sure you have sufficient winter gear, the proper rain gear, a proper rain jacket. Not, I don't want to mention any brands, but you get those jackets that you used to have in school. Those are rain jackets, but have a proper hiking jacket. I mean, they are built for purpose, for the extreme conditions that you're going to face. And you get a tube scarf, a multifunction headgear. I don't know.
Oh, yes. No, I have a few of those.
Yes, so they
I never knew what to call it.
So they are great to use as a beanie or as a scarf to just cover your neck, because you lose a lot of heat through your head and your neck. So you want to make sure you're properly insulated in winter. And if you do come across cloud cover, if you're able to retrace your steps and just remove yourself from those conditions. Or if you can't, try and find shelter. Remain still until the conditions improve.
And in cases of dehydration?
So dehydration, as I mentioned, salts. You want to sip water. You don't want to be gulping water. Dehydration is a very extreme medical condition. It can lead to organ failure long term if it's severe.
Sure.
So you want to call rescue if you suspect someone has collapsed because of dehydration. So the rescue number again is 021 937 0300 or 112 from your cell phone. So that's the rescue organization, and you explain to them that someone has collapsed because of dehydration. And if they have collapsed, you want to make sure that they are comfortable.
Sure.
Shelter them if they're in the sun. If they're exposed to the sun, you want to maybe put a jacket over them, or make sure that they're in some sort of shade.
Okay.
Keep them stable, yeah.
And Louise, I know that Hi-Tec does a lot to promote, safety and considered activities. What are some of the ways that your brand does that?
So I think the first thing that we do is ensure that all our gear is as designed for safety. That's obviously the first and the most important thing for us, so that we know that when people are putting on our footwear and apparel, that it is the very best, so that they are equipped to go out and tackle any sort of mountain that they want. We also work with few organizations in and around the country, making sure that we promote hiking safety, giving them information, empowering people to be able to know what to expect on the mountain. Our website's also got a whole bunch of articles and info on there that people can do. I think it's just about giving people the necessary resources so that they are as equipped as possible.
Yeah, it's a weird responsibility that casual fashion brands don't have, is that like you are providing the equipment for people to do things that could potentially be dangerous.
100%.
Now, Khalid, I want to hear about one or two times that you've had to go and do a rescue of somebody who's in a challenging scenario. Not to gloat at them, but to understand how things can go wrong and what kind of interventions are often necessary from mountain rescuers to get people out of that trouble.
Okay. There are a few rescues that I can relay, but I think a couple comes to mind. One involves a couple, and they are mountain users. They had family members that had come from out of town. So they went up, but they got separated. So rule number one in hiking, you want to stick together. So they got separated. The wife went ahead, and the husband stayed behind with the person that was struggling. The husband couldn't find his wife. Kids were there, the wife missing, and then he got hold of a ranger, tried and searched for his wife. He couldn't find her.
Yo.
And he called rescue. So that's when we came in. So we had a few teams searching from the bottom, a few teams on the top. And I was one of the teams going up from the bottom, just in case she made her way back down.
That's the worst team.
Yes. It was. So they put the strong team to hike up.
Yeah.
And so they had two teams on top. So they did find her. She was sheltering in a bush.
I see.
The conditions got quite bad with the wind picking up. The things she did right, she had a rain jacket with her. She made sure she didn't veer too far off the path. So when they searched for her, they blew the whistle, and she made herself visible, and so they found her.
Excellent.
So that's one case. I've got another case of a couple that decided they were busy exploring. They were fairly competent, they wanted to graduate from normal trails to some more adventure trails. And so they did it, and it was getting quite late. They realized they're not gonna make it to the top. And again, they called rescue. We got there, we assessed the position where they were. Fortunately, they had the first aid, and in the first aid is an emergency blanket, which is a tiny little folded up, looks like a thin foil.
Yes.
So fortunately, they had that. They had the rain jackets. We told them it's quite difficult to access them. We tried, but the position it was too difficult to access them.
Sure.
And they basically stuck it out overnight.
Wow.
And they were airlifted the next morning.
Sure.
So those were cases where they had the proper equipment and the gear to see them through the night. And it's very important.
Worst thing about that is you can see where you want to be.
Yeah.
You can see everybody there
Yes.
completely fine down on the shoreline
Yeah,
with the lights in the evening.
It
But
is, and we could see the lights shining.
yeah,
It was too steep. At night, you don't want to be risking yourself. As a rescue, you want to make sure that you are safe.
yeah,
And if you're bringing someone down, you need to make sure that they're going to be safe as well.
for sure.
Yeah. So the
That's
safest
interesting.
option, was to airlift.
Yeah, Louise, what is so clear from what Khalid was describing was like the expanding community of people who love hiking and want to go from a normal hiking trail to more a tougher one, more complex one, more experienced one. That's just one of the many trends that seem to be causing the culture of hiking to evolve in recent years. What kinds of trends in hiking, even in terms of just gear, have you been seeing that I guess Hi-Tec wants to service and help with?
Yeah, well, we've also definitely been seeing a rise in people being outdoors and especially hiking, not only in Cape Town but throughout the country, which is great. It's so nice for people to be outdoors. What we are seeing is people are wanting more technology in the products. So we're constantly looking at what Global's doing, making sure that all our products have the very best technology in them. People are also wanting to see the boots and the jackets be more lightweight and versatile, because they needing to be a lot more durable for the conditions. There's also a trend right now, it's called Gorpcore.
Excuse me?
Gorpcore.
I feel offended. I don't know why, but it feels like a slur.
Google it.
Gorpcore, what is it?
It's when people are wearing their hiking boots or sort of out camping gear on the streets.
Oh, in everyday life.
In everyday life. So it's like transitioning, and you do see it more and more.
Why is it called Gorpcore?
Don't ask me. I didn't come up with the name.
I don't even know how to spell Gorp. Do you know how to spell Gorp?
I think it's Gorp.
Okay. Core.
Yeah, but
so it needs to become more fashionable.
Needs to be more fashionable.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, but for us, obviously, the technology and making it as lightweight and versatile, so that people can sort of roll up the jacket when they need to, or be able to also get on an aeroplane wearing the jacket. So it's just making sure that it's cross-functional.
And are people trying to accessorize in hiking now? kind of like the way Stanley Cups, you can now get a fan on it. You know what I mean?
I mean, the die-hard hikers are like, absolutely not.
Yeah, I know.
But sort of the new age hikers are like, yeah, we want a nice, colourful jacket or whatnot. So that's, again, it's just finding what works for you.
It took my dad 68 years to wear ankle guards in case snakes were going to bite him. 68 years. He was like, no, this is not how we do it. This is not the way. And now we're like, Dad, there's snakes. Like, you've got to be more sensible
So now is he
than
wearing
that.
them?
Yeah, he
Okay,
does.
good.
But that's because he likes to walk in the front because he's the patriarch. So we do our best with that. Speaking of that, funnily enough, Khalid, when you are thinking about, because I know, I mean, I come from a hiking family. I remember being taught how to hike. And it would be like a Sunday thing where we would go to one or other, often actually a CapeNature reserve, and we would walk there. But you need to start training kids from young. How do you go about getting kids ready to be able to handle both longer hikes and more challenging ones, and arguably in some cases, like with snakes, more dangerous ones?
Well, you want to make it fun for them, so maybe involve them in the planning.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah.
We were never asked. There was no planning committee with the kids.
So if you involve them in the planning, then they seem part of the, of what you're going to do. Give them a few options, and then make them decide
Sure.
what trail you want to do. Kids enjoy water, so CapeNature has got some wonderful trails out in Jonkershoek. The Jonkershoek Nature Reserve, which is quite very nice for kids because they enjoy the water, especially in summer. You want to take lots of breaks. Make sure that they're carrying their own snacks and water. So even if it's a string bag, you don't want to have the parent carrying all the snacks and everything. They get separated from the kids.
Right.
The kids want to have a sip of water or a snack. So make sure that they teach them from young to carry their own.
And to moderate. Because if you chow at the beginning, you are
Yes.
so screwed.
So you want to ration them, yeah. Just get enough until the next break, yeah.
Yeah.
And try and make it fun. What I've done before is have a little checklist of things that they're likely to see when they're out in the mountain, and they tick it off, almost like a bingo.
Yeah.
So I would choose.
But you mustn't oversell that, because sometimes,
Yes.
Dad will say, hey, there's this waterfall, but he doesn't say that it's not a swimmable one.
Oh.
And then you get to the top and you feel devastated.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Louise, how does Hi-Tec go about making sure that there's the right gear for all levels of expertise? Because I think that sometimes you walk into a hiking store these days and you look up and you feel like you need to get a PhD to understand the difference between two shoes. How does Hi-Tec go about handling both experts and beginners and everybody in between?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's got to do with our range. So we don't want to overcomplicate it. So I think there is definitely a shoe for everybody. We kind of have in our retail stores, the shoes are kind of from beginner to advanced. So that's quite easy. Our staff are trained to be able to give you the guidance that you need. But it's also making sure that you come in with the research of what you want to do to sort of then empower and make sure that you tell or when you on the website, making sure that you're getting what you need. But definitely the call outs will also say, this is for gentle to moderate, or this is for extreme conditions. If the shoe's waterproof and it's got sort of the big technology on the outsoles and stuff, then that's for the big guns.
Yeah. And I mean, I imagine, I'm only guessing, but I imagine that hikers in general, they care about the planet. They care about nature and conservation because the places they love are sometimes under threat, but at least there's a consciousness, there's an awareness that they might be under threat at some points or others. So do you ever get the equivalent of hiking vegans coming in being like, were any rabbits hurt in the process of making this? Like, are you guys thinking about like changing the way that you make your products to be more green, sustainable, conscious of sustainability?
We've taken a big stand to be able to be more sustainable. We currently use is called Reprieve Technology.
Okay.
They get this company get plastic bottles from the ocean and sort of grind them down into sort of resin-like beads that then kind of gets, I don't know, it's quite an expansive
scientific process.
But then what that then gets used in all our puffer jackets.
Oh, epic.
Uses Reprieve Technology.
That's cool.
So I think our tagline is every puffer jacket uses 67 recycled bottles.
Epic. That's really cool.
We've started using that in our new hiking boots as well, because we are wanting, and we also have been getting feedback from our customers saying we need to be more sustainable. So how do we go about doing that? Because fun fact is that you can never break down a shoe.
Yeah.
So a shoe will always, you can break down as much as possible, but there'll always be parts of it. So that's not something that sits well with us. So we've kind of thought, okay, well, how can we be as sustainable as possible with these shoes, using sort of recycled material, but still keeping the quality and whatnot.
Although it's funny because you guys make such good shoes, and again, haven't been paid to say this, I love my Hi-Tec boots. That the most sustainable thing is just to make something that you use forever.
Yes,
like
that
you
it
just never
lasts,
need to
yes.
get rid of it because it still works so well. The Wolfberg cracks know my Hi-Tec shoes so well. Khalid, earlier we spoke a little bit about safety on mountain trails, and you spoke about two examples of two groups of people who had the right gear, but particularly from like a medical aid, or sorry, not medical aid, lol, wish that was on the mountain, but like first aid gear and the right kind of things to carry to handle injuries. But for the most common kinds of injuries that happen in hiking, which I can tell you from experience is a twisted ankle, but there are a variety of other ones, maybe a gash, a blood wound, or something like that from a fall. What are the go-to methods of handling the most common injury situations when you're hiking?
The first thing is don't panic. Remain calm. Assess the situation and how did the person get injured. Make sure that no one else is likely to get injured in a similar way. You want to check the seriousness of the injury. If it's serious, or even if it's not serious, I would suggest calling the rescue. Just informing them that you're dealing with a casualty, the severity of the situation, and then they can be at least on standby if it's not serious. Because if it's not serious, it could always increase in terms of the severity. It might start off as what you think is just a twisted ankle, but moments later you might realize the person can't put any weight on it, and you're going to need to have this person carried out. So I would say first step is to call rescue. You want to make the person comfortable. You want to stabilize them. Make sure that they are not panicking, and you just reassure them that you are there to assist them, or help is on the way.
Okay.
And in terms of first aid, I would suggest anyone who's interested in or seriously getting into hiking is just to go on a first aid course. They cover a lot of the basics, and it makes a huge difference.
And then in terms of, you said earlier that Cape Town and the Western Cape have like 4 seasons in a day, but climate change, as we've heard on this podcast series already, has a real effect on soil erosion and on how brush is behaving in relation to maybe fires or all of these different things. Have you seen climate change causing more unpredictable weather that's making it actively harder to mitigate risk before going climbing, or rather hiking?
Yeah. I would definitely say it is making it harder. We're seeing rivers being flooding the banks more often now than before.
Sure.
The guys at CapeNature having to do more trail maintenance because of mudslides and those things. So definitely I would suggest people call ahead, just get in touch with the local rangers, and get their feedback on the conditions of the trail, and be prepared for changes in conditions.
Sure.
And if you get trapped in maybe a river's in flood, don't attempt to cross it. Rather sit it out. Either wait or turn around or sit it out. Yeah.
Don't be a hero.
No, definitely not. We've had a few rescues, people attempting to cross rivers.
Really?
Yeah, competent guys.
Yeah.
But it just takes one person to slip, and it didn't end well.
Yeah, ironically, it's often the heroes who die in movies. People need to remember that more often. As we head towards the end of this episode, thank you to the both of you so much for your time. I wanted to ask from both of you, what's like the one piece of advice for somebody planning their next hiking adventure? The one thing, and I would love to hear from like look, I know it's almost impossible to pick a top hiking adventure ever, but like to hear a little bit from one of your favorite times out there in the world into a piece of advice about somebody going forward. If Louise, you could go first.
Oh, that's a tough one.
It's tough to choose. I'm really sorry.
It is tough to choose. I would definitely say be prepared, as I have mentioned, do your research, because then it will be the most enjoyable. Then at least you know you've kind of taken the worry out of it. I would say one of my most sort of fun mountain experiences was when we went away with some friends and sort of climbed the mountain, and it didn't take us as long as we thought it would. So then we were sort of up at the top of the mountain, able to enjoy sort of the sunset. And
Wow.
yeah, it's simple, but it made lasting memories, and sort of spent the night up there, and yeah, it was great. But again, we had planned and we knew what we were in for, and so had the right equipment and all of that. So that was the best.
It's incredibly satisfying to look at the expected time walked and to realize how much faster you were than
So
it.
good.
You feel like
Yeah.
a better person than other people.
Yeah.
And from you, Khalid?
From me, I think hiking, you should be doing it to enjoy the outdoors. So rule number 1 in conservation is leave no trace. So respect nature and respect the other mountain users as well. As my colleagues mentioned, be prepared, do your research, make sure that you got the right gear, the appropriate gear for the conditions that you're going to be facing. And hiking, I think for me, it's about enjoying the outdoors with people that enjoy the outdoors as well. So get a nice group of like-minded people to enjoy it with you.
Yeah.
The worst thing is to have someone complaining all the way up.
Yeah. Or someone who's just not that cool. And you've got 6 hours with them on a
Yes.
trail. And give me one banging hike, because you seem like the kind of person who I want to get like a top 20 list from and then just go and do it like a bucket list. Give me one that you really love.
I really enjoyed the Wild Coast.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful area in South Africa, and I would recommend it. So I've done the section from Port Edward all the way down to Port St. John's.
Sure. That's cool.
It's a beautiful coastline, and there are a lot of trails. Cedarburg is one of my favorite. Yours as well.
You just sit in Algeria for 2 weeks, and then
Yes.
you just every day you go somewhere else.
So actually, my family was saying we should book a cabin in Algeria again in summer. So we might just do that. Spend another holiday there.
It always makes me laugh because when you tell the story of going to Algeria, you have to first say, we didn't go to North Africa. Thank you so much to the both of you, Louise and Khalid. And thank you so much to you for joining us for this episode of Green Noise, a CapeNature podcast series production.